Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the On Purpose podcast, where it's our privilege to show up and hang out with you each and every week. I'm excited this week to sit down and talk to a guest that's trying to balance having like entrepreneurial skill and leadership and drive with heart and empathy and finding that perfect spot where we can be heart-centered, right? And she actually calls it heart-centered leadership. So I want to explore further on that balancing. Sometimes we think about the heart and leading with our heart. We think of softness or maybe not being able to hold people accountable or challenge them to be better. And I couldn't think that that's farther from the truth, but it's my opinion. So this week I'm excited to sit down with an expert in this field. Deb Crowe is an award-winning international best-selling author and heart-centered entrepreneurial leader. She has a wealth of experience coaching leaders at all levels and stages of their careers, while also teaching and sharing her knowledge as a college professor. Her passion lies in inspiring and delivering positive impact, and she has dedicated her career to creating ventures that prioritize both people and our planet. So I hope you enjoy this week's interview with Deb Crowe. Deb, my newest friend, welcome to the On Purpose podcast.
Jerrod, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm excited because you are tackling something that I really have believed in for a long time. And sometimes it's hard to put into words how we can be heart-centered, how we can lead people to be better with our heart without being pushovers, right? Without and still be able to hold people accountable and challenge them to be better, but still lead with empathy and love and courage to embrace that. So when I saw you come across my channels, I was like, okay, this is a topic I definitely want to spend some time on and bring to our community. So first off, I want to say thank you for having the courage to lead some of these discussions.
Thank you. It's an uphill journey for sure.
Why do you say it's uphill? What's the thoughts on that?
I have been a heart-centered leader my whole life. I started my company when I was 24 and I just had my birthday yesterday and I'm 58, so you do the math. And I never swayed away from it, even though I heard it doesn't have a place in business acumen. So, as much as I feel like I'm forging my own path, there's days where I feel like I have 1,000-pound backpack on and I'm going uphill. But I'm okay to do that because I'm clearing the way for the future leaders of today that are the younger generation. And I'm okay to hold off the tsunami going uphill because I know I'm going to leave the world in a better place.
Oh, I love it. I love the clarity of that purpose. And I want to kind of explore that a little more. But first, before we get to the heavy lifting of the show, Deb, I got to warm you up. I got to get some background knowledge so our folks really know what kind of people we're talking with today.
So my background is
Oh no, I
neurotrauma.
got the questions.
You got the
I
questions?
got the
Okay.
questions.
I
Well,
get to sit back?
yeah. Yeah, this is easy peasy. I got the questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
Not that your background's not super duper important, but this is really important. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
See now, coffee or tea? See how important that question is?
Well, it depends on the mood, but the default's coffee, a good cup of coffee,
Like what kind?
like a nice Colombian bean, dark roast, full body. Just you taste it and it's like, this is exactly what I want.
Nope.
I'm giving you a visual right now,
I
aren't I?
love it. I love it. I'm right there with you. I'm tasting coffee or cream and sugar or just straight black.
I'm sweet enough. I'm just a cream girl.
I love it. All right. Favorite combined meal, brunch or dinner?
Oh, brunch.
Is it because of mimosas? That's what usually people pick it for.
I'm a big breakfast girl, and sometimes on the weekend you kind of want to trail it to lunch
Mm.
and then you get to combine breakfast and lunch. Mimosas are optional. It depends if I have that great coffee or not.
That's true. All right. Sunrises or sunsets?
I'm a boater, so I'm going to say both, but there's nothing like being on one of the beautiful Great Lakes in Ontario, Canada, catching a sunset, but I also get up early if we stay out overnight on the water. And the sunrise is just as spectacular.
All right. What is it about the sunsets that you like?
It's the end of the day. It's a
Yeah.
moment of pause. It's Mother Nature giving you a beautiful different light show every day. It gives you time to lean in and get back some of that awe and wonder that we lose as adults that we have easily as kids.
Yeah.
And I'm a yoga teacher too, so I'm a big pause in the moment kind of girl.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I really wish, well, maybe we'll start. We'll just encourage people to really take that pause around their sunset and really reflect, not just take it for granted, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Reading physical books or listening to audiobooks?
I love holding a book. I love the smell of new books, but when I'm walking or hiking or riding my bike, I do have an Audible account as well.
Yeah.
So the majority of the time in the year, I'm physically holding a book. I'm reading 3 books at once.
Oh,
And
wow.
in the summer months when it's warm, like we're moving into now, do a lot of bike riding, a lot of hiking, a lot of walking, and there's nothing like a good book when you're on a walk. It just kind of allows you to get lost in the activity, right?
Yeah, for sure. What's a favorite book you got going right now?
I'm reading well, I've got 3 on the go. I'm
I know,
reading
I
The
don't know how
Trust.
you do that.
Well, my mentor, when I was 27, a mentor of mine said, "You always want to have 3 books on the go.
Mm,
One that you read for your craft." So I always read a
sure.
leadership book. One that's like a fun book. And I'm really into memoirs. And I buy memoirs of people that I'm really interested in reading their story because we learn,
Yeah.
by seeing what others go through. And then I pick a book that I wouldn't normally pick because I think judge a book by its cover that I wouldn't like it. And that's been some of my funnest reading in the last 10 years. But the book I'm enjoying right now, I just received as a gift from David Horsiger, and it's called The Trusted Leader. And he's like the world guru on trust in the workplace.
Mm,
And I'm loving it.
that's good. I'll have to make a note on that one. The Trusted Leader.
The Trusted Leader by David Horsiger. He's out of
Yeah.
Minnesota. And
Okay.
he is the go-to guy around the world right now. He did his PhD. He did his dissertation on trust and leadership and organizational culture. And he read my book and he said, "Now I can see why you love my work." So he sent me his book and I just love it. It's one of those books you don't want to put down.
Mm, that's good to know. All right, you got something big weighing on your mind. You got to clear things out, clear some space to get a decision made or to kick into action. Do you go silent or do you put on music?
I'm a yoga teacher. I go silent.
Mm,
I
yeah, silent. That's a good one for you. Yoga tea. I should have known that answer, huh? I could have put 2 and 2 together on that one. How you feeling? You warmed up, my friend? See, that's the
I'm
important
warm.
stuff.
I'm warmed up. It's good. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yoga. You just don't come right into the deep poses right off without warming up the
No.
muscles. So talk to me, Deb, how would you even define heart-centered leadership? What does that mean?
My definition of heart-centered leadership is honoring your connection with people. And when I'm asked, what does that really mean? It means you're honoring the connection, like you and I are doing right
Mm,
now. We're honoring our connection. I'm excited to be on your podcast. You were delighted to have me as a guest. There's no reciprocity from this. We're just meeting, developing trust and rapport. We're honoring the connection and we're helping each other. I'm going to learn from you and you're going to learn from me. And I don't know how your podcast works, but the more people I meet, it makes me think of somebody else that
yeah.
I've interviewed. And I feel like this concierge, and I'm like, I want to connect Jerrod with Tom or Susan. And I do it for the love of people. I love people. And I've never put anything around my business ahead of that. I have a chapter in my book on my Irish Nana. And she used to say to me, and I remember this, I was 8 years old because she ran my dad's business. And she used to say, when we look after our people, the money always comes.
Mm,
And I've never swayed away from that principle. And I believe when we inspire others and we model that, who wouldn't want to follow a leader like that?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic advice. And man, you're 8 years old when you got that.
Yeah.
What did you see? Like, so talk me through going back in that time. So she tells you this. What did you see? Like, how were they treating people? And what did you as a little person notice of like, okay, this is how I want to be?
My Nan had such a great personality. She loved to laugh. I used to tease her as I got older and say, "You're going to live to be 100 because you laugh so much." Everybody that walked into my dad's business, she knew their name.
Mm,
Hey, Tom, how are you doing? How's Susan? How's the kids? How's that new puppy? Like infinite details because she would take 5 minutes to talk to them. There was no reciprocity. She was listening. She cared. If the phone rang, she'd say, "Hold on for a minute, deal with the call." And then she'd come back and she'd carry on the conversation like no time had ever lapsed. And I watched her do this with ease. And she had a very gregarious personality. But my dad was a tradesperson. He did insulation and pipe covering. And I know people used to drop in just to say hi to my Nan. And
huh.
her name was Elizabeth, but everyone called her Lil. And the gifts that she used to get on her birthday and at Christmas, and just everybody loved her. Like every trade that came in there, or any person that had to call her, whether it was about an invoice or an estimate, or she made everyone feel like they were the most important customer to them or the most important trade that they were hiring. And just the way she looked after my dad's staff, keeping the coffee room clean and the water cooler filled, and just all those tiny little infinite details. That's where the secret sauce is. She used to say that.
Mm,
The details are looking after the small details and showing people that you care. And when you show people that you care, you're saying to them, "You know what? I value you. I hear you. I see you. I validate how hard you work for us, or you're a great customer." And I just thought, I want to be that. And I became that, even though like I said, yeah, it's been uphill, but I
yeah.
never wavered from it because I know being a good person is the right thing. And I lay my head down every night knowing that I was a good person that day. And I will never waver from it.
Mm. I love it. What I love about that is it's something that we've stressed before in other episodes and we continue in our community is that if we sit back and say we're going to make a difference when a big thing happens, we're missing the opportunity to make difference with all the little things that happen every day.
Absolutely.
Right? Like you said, like cleaning the break room or making sure you knew people's names, something as simple as being able to address another human being by name goes so far in creating that trust.
And I noticed little things about people like new glasses or a haircut, or I often hear, "Wow, you remember that? You have such a great memory." And in my mind, I'm chuckling, thinking, "No, I listen to you when you're speaking to me."
Right. Yeah, no, that's so important. Have you always been conscious enough to slow down and truly listen even as a younger person? Did you kind of notice like, because we're in a world, everything's fast, and it's been that way for a while now. Did you ever feel like, man, I'm different because I slow stuff down, or was there a process in that?
I always felt different because I did listen. And I
Yeah.
notice when people don't, which is the norm,
Hmm.
and everybody's in such a damn rush today, and they're missing out on so many beautiful opportunities with people. And I have this conversation every day with leaders. And I'm like, you need to take the time.
Right.
Because I always say life shows up in our work and work shows up in our life. Nobody gets up in the morning
Mm,
and says, "I'm in such a bad mood today. I'm going to go into work and make everyone's life hell." A heart-centered leader will know something's off with that person, and that's an opportunity, like you said, to pull them aside and say, "Hey, what's going on today?" Not, "How are you doing?" How about reframing it? "How are you feeling? What's going on in your life? What can I
mm,
help you with?" I had a CFO who lost his father, and he had to fly across the world in the middle of COVID, and his team had his back. And I said to him, "Are you concerned about being away?" And he said, "I'm heart centered. They're going to navigate through this project without me because I've trained them well. I treat them well." And he said, "I'm not even going to worry about any of it. And he came back and everything was done beautiful. That's rare.
It is rare. One, it's rare to have that trust, and two, it's rare to be kind of leading into my next question, that self-awareness, right? Because I I, I want to talk to you about the importance of being self-aware to truly lead from my heart.
Mhm. I wrote a whole chapter of it in my book. I call it Managing the Inner Leader.
Mm,
I have people on the daily say things to me like, I don't trust that person. That person doesn't listen to me. I have issues making decisions. I can't delegate. And I take away all the external parts of those statements and I go back to talk about them and the inner leader inside of them and the lack of self-awareness, and it's usually remnants from a previous role, or they were taught from a leader that it's profit before people,
sure.
and it's all about business acumen and metrics and KPIs and all the other languaging. And I said, but you're not going to meet your metrics if you don't have any people. And this, I see it quite regularly where large organizations will have these leaders take the 360, and it's like being a 911 operator. You do the 360 and then you don't know the outcome. And then they bring someone external like me in and they're like, we'll tell Jerrod how he did compared to last year and his team doesn't really like him. So
Right.
can you handle this? And I'm like, wow. And I take the outcome of the 360 and I reframe it and we do situational based questions and coaching.
Yeah.
So I don't have to come out and say, well, Jerrod, you can say what you need to say in a heart-centered way, even if it's not the most positive information.
Yeah, see that's a misnomer, right? That heart-centered means I can't be honest or that I can't hold you accountable, right?
Yeah.
I think actually, at least my experience of being led by people and leading people, the ones that our values align, which I think is a key component, right? Is we got to know mutual values if you want me to take certain amounts of feedback.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me.
And I got to know that you're actually giving this to me because you're invested in me, which means that relationship has to be built before, right? It's being built up over time.
Yeah.
So how do we get people to, whether it's in business or just in our life, to stop for a minute and maybe ask themselves, are they investing the right amount of time in the relationships around them? How do we get people to slow down and I guess what I say is maybe contribute more to that relationship bank of the person versus the product?
I think the question that opens that whole conversation and dialogue is asking them if they're happy.
Ooh, wow. So talk me through that. So I'm an employee there. You would just ask me simply that, or where does that go?
We You lean into it by going back to what I just said. Leadership shows up in our life and
Yep.
life shows up in our leadership. I've been noticing you've been struggling a bit this week. How are you feeling? Not thinking. Are you happy in your role? Are you happy with what's going on outside of work? And then stop talking
Mm,
and don't sit right across from a person. You always sit side by side. And I'm trained in grief and bereavement. And one of the things you do when somebody is crying or emotional or not having a great day is you just lean in with the top of your body. It's a very soft
uh,
nonverbal cue, and the key is to stop talking.
yeah.
It's like throwing the fishing pole, right? You throw the line in the
Yeah.
water, and what do? You wait for the bite. And then
Yeah.
you slowly ask a question and you're slowly reeling it in. But you got to stop talking. And I find a lot of people want to fix people or
Mhm.
please people, or they become too verbose. You don't need to say a lot to kind of just tipping the lid open on Pandora's box. Most people, when the behavior is presented, something's already happened. So a heart-centered leader will observe that as not typical behavior of that person. And like you said, it's an opportunity to have a really heart-centered conversation. And it has nothing to do with their role or responsibility, their title. There's
Yeah.
no extrinsic value. Hey, it's just you and me. How are you feeling? Like, what's going on? And then stop talking.
So how do we get leaders to develop trust, right? Because that's going to require trust on my part if I'm going to open up and tell you like I have a problem at home, or we're raising teenagers and there's this issue that's because all of that we bring that to work, right? Just like you're saying there is life is work. I bring all of that with me. I can't not have that. But I also have to have trust in you as a leader, and that has to be built before I'm going to open it up. So what are the basic steps would you say to establishing that relationship of trust with the people you're blessed to lead?
Especially at the higher end of leadership that I work with, they need to set the foundation of trust and rapport, and people need to know that that openness is there and it's not going to be thrown in their face. I love
Mhm.
talking about the stuff that nobody wants to say on a podcast.
Yeah,
You don't want it thrown in your face in front of the HR person on your next performance review.
right.
That has to stop. So if I come to you and I share my heart with you and give you a little glimpse into my home life, and I feel like you've offered me a psychologically safe space, and then I'm sitting down for my annual review, and now that's in my file, that doesn't work for me.
Well, not only does it not work for you, but it doesn't work for every other employee you tell,
Exactly.
right? Because you're
So
going to
that's
share
what,
that story.
yeah. And that's one of the things that I see a lot. So I say, behave your brand. If you tell me
Mm.
your brand's heart centered and it's on your shiny brochures and painted on your, with your mission statement, it's
Yeah.
aesthetically beautiful, but you're not behaving your brand. And there's a lot of that out there. A lot.
Yeah. And that could even be in our personal lives, right? Like if we're talking about being a heart-centered leader, as you're talking as I envision I can be a heart-centered leader as a parent or a coach. So I think it's important, right, that we do know our brand and our personal values. And just as much as organizations have brands and values, so do we as individuals.
Absolutely. And I've always had my kids call me on it. And I'll, like, if they want to get into a big conversation and I'm tired, I will say to them, I'm not 100% tonight. I'm like maybe 50.
Okay.
And when you set the tone, they know that they're not getting all of you because you're done. It's the end of the day. You're not ready for another level of heavy. You can kind of maybe have an appetizer conversation,
Yeah.
but delay the main thing to the next
Sure.
day. Obviously, there's lots of other variables around that, but that's how I navigated that with my kids. And I even do it with my husband. Like he'll come home and I'll say, "Where are you at?" And he'll be like, "Hell of a day, da 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 da. We're just gonna watch Netflix or whatever."
Yeah.
But even though you're sitting together as a married couple, it doesn't mean because you're not dialoguing that you're not together.
Yeah.
And we've been married like 31 years, but we do the check ins with each other and we taught our kids that.
Mm.
And that way, the other person who's maybe struggling isn't going to get upset because you're being transparent and authentic and heart centered by saying, I don't have it in me tonight. Like we can start the conversation, but I'm not going to be your best mom tonight. And I'm
Right.
allowed not to be the best mom 24/7. And
Yeah.
I'm teaching them not to have any form of perfection. We love imperfection in our house, and I'd rather have them try and fall on their face and get back up and say, "Okay, I tried. I'm going to convert that to a learning opportunity, fail forward, and I'm going to try it again."
Yeah. And that's critical, right? Family, that's critical in the workplace. If you have team members who are afraid if they try something new, if they try to innovate, and if they fail, it's going to be held against them, then you're putting
Exactly.
people in a box.
Absolutely. And throw introverts into the mix. I've sat in meetings where I've watched the introverts and
Yeah.
I've gone and talked to them after. And I remember one gentleman recently, I said, I watched you through the whole meeting today. And I said, you pretty much planned out all of next year, didn't you? And he's like, yeah, they are such a gift. Just because they're not verbose or chatty, you get them alone and say, where were you going with this? Tell me what, tell me more of what your thinking is. And they're brilliant. And a good heart-centered leader really makes space and time for the introverts because they are such visionary leaders. They're independent thinkers and they're so creative and innovative. They are just a joy to have on any team. But people think that they're not of value. And I've seen this around the globe.
Mm.
You just have to know how to manage them and how to help them lead.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine just trying to determine if somebody's of value or not based on introvert, extrovert.
You know what? Business is full of labels. The language
That's
has a lot
true.
of labeling, right?
Yeah, that's true. So, but to be heart-centered means there's room for the individual, correct?
Absolutely. We are all individual and
Yeah.
we all have a different life and leadership journey.
Yeah, and different needs, right? Like I have different needs from my boss than maybe my teammate does.
Absolutely. And a good leader knows that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of this a lot. We hire in different businesses I've worked with. We want to hire people that are creative, that come from good educational backgrounds, good character backgrounds, have demonstrated ability to think freely on their feet without supervision. And then sometimes we get them on board. And we want to put them all in the same box and have them do all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're upset that they don't stick around long.
Hmm.
And we can't figure out why retention is low.
Retention is low because there's a trust problem. I can tell you
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trust, right? I don't trust them to actually do their job. Why would they stick around for someone that doesn't trust them? And that's, as much as generational bashing goes on, right? This next generation doesn't do this, this, and this. One of the things I love about being able to coach people younger than me and from the next generation is they're much more in tune than my generation was. And that is if they don't feel valued and trusted and it's not fun, they're gonna go find something different to do.
Yep.
You
And
know,
our talent pool is shrinking.
you think it's shrinking?
It is shrinking. Our talent pool is shrinking for the younger generation. The biggest demographic globally now is the baby boomers and
Yep,
my generation, which is the Gen Xers right after,
yep,
because people aren't having kids. But the younger generation, the millennials, is exactly what you just said. If they are not valued or poured into, they leave and they don't like being shoved in the 9 to 5 box.
yeah,
And I really think they were at the forefront of the hybrid remote working. I mean, I think COVID pushed us there, but they've sustained it.
yeah. No, absolutely. And honestly, even for my lifestyle, because I'm whatever after boomer, I always get confused.
Gen
Um,
X.
Gen X, that's me. But we sold all our stuff in 2021. We've been traveling full time, working remotely, creating podcasts from the road that is very non-traditional for many of my peers, right? Who are still invested in careers and save for retirement, where we kind of took a much younger mindset approach to this stage of our lives.
Yeah, a lot of people have done that.
Yeah. So but it's interesting, right? Because it's easy to look at the next generation if they show different characteristics than the current to think it's lesser than, right? If they don't want to do everything like we're doing, then somehow they're not the same. But I always ask people, what do you think two generations ahead of us said about us?
Yeah.
Same kind of stuff, right?
It's history repeats itself, and every decade we grow and learn. I see it now as I'm a nana now, and my daughter,
Congratulations.
thank you. My daughter will say, well, what about what you did? And I said, we didn't do this 30 years ago. They didn't have that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm my mother. And then I remember my mother talking to her mother. So now that I'm in my late 50s, every decade, look at everything. Look at technology, look at healthcare, look at medicine, look at disease management, look at
Mm,
crisis management, look at what we just went through with this pandemic. So, to hear what you've said about your life, I know several people that have done what you've done, and they're like, I'm going to live my life. And I'm
yeah.
like, good for you. Like, this isn't a dress rehearsal. We're here once.
Do you
And
think
our
Go ahead.
generation was forced
Yeah.
not force, but Freedom 55 was that marketing tool for London Life for putting money away. And then 65 was the age that one of your presidents picked for old age,
Right.
security. So our prime minister went along with your president. And now it's funny because people born in the year I was born, we now have delayed 65 because the government doesn't have enough money, because we went like this. We went from all these kids to now all these elderly people.
Yeah.
And elderly is now a modern elder, and it's 45 and older is considered a modern elder. And
Well,
I mean,
that's
if you love what you're doing, why do you have to retire? I
sure.
don't I don't plan on retiring. Like, I love what I do.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I don't even know, quite honestly, I don't even know what retired would mean anymore. Right.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
for a lot of time, I thought it was a negative term, right? So many people I knew retired, which meant they quit doing a lot of anything they loved,
Yeah,
and they didn't live much longer.
exactly. And that's, I have a neurotrauma background, and Alzheimer's and all the other
Mm,
types of dementia, because there's 10 in total. It's that you have this active life where you're thinking and using your analytical and
yeah.
higher cognitive and critical thinking skills. And then you stop because someone told you to, and you have your pension. But then you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? I have done hobbies and other things and volunteered every decade of my life because tomorrow is never promised. So
No.
why would I wait to be whatever age?
Yeah.
And I get asked all the time, "When are you going to work till?" And I'm like, "Till I'm done."
Yeah.
We had a mayor here near Toronto, Mayor Hazel, and she was in her 90s when she
Oh, wow.
finally retired.
Yeah.
In her
Yeah,
90s, and cognitively agile, just awesome. It's, you know what? It's like the happy question. It's a choice and a decision.
mm. Yeah, and I think the thing that we underestimate is the value of community and the importance of just being around people every day.
Yeah, absolutely. We need
It
each other.
We do, and that's a balance with the remote work and the ability to be anywhere and do anything nowadays, but one of the benefits of today's world is we can create community in so many different ways,
Absolutely.
right, that we didn't have before. Deb, can you share with me what would you say is your biggest challenge you faced in promoting and getting people to buy into the heart-centered leadership philosophy?
I think since I released my book, I think the hardest part was having the credibility of
Mm,
having my opinion received. And once my book was released in November, and it's been to number one 6 times, people were waiting for this because it's a playbook. So it's not a one and done, put it on the shelf. It's a earmarked page. It's highlighted. It's got little post-it flags. And people were like, I've been waiting for this. And I was waiting to write it. And finally, during COVID, when we all paused,
yeah.
I took that opportunity to get it done. So putting your thought leadership out there, and I wrote it in such a way where I had to show my life and leadership journey. So it's been described as 1/3 memoir to show you how I became a heart-centered leader, but chose to sustain it and all those uphill battles. And I end every chapter with a full life circle moment.
Mm,
And then it's 1/3 leadership book, which is all the traditional, case studies and cited research. And then the last third is all my own original work. And I also created a leadership series for our local college that I teach. So it was me drawing a line in the sand saying, I'm done with this. I'm done with clients having awful bosses. And really, I didn't pick coaching, Jerrod. It picked me. I lost 3 vice presidents and 2 CEOs to cancer. They
mm,
were on short term disability claims. I was asked to get them back to work because I was great at getting people back to work. And from the day of that phone call to 10 months later, I lost them all. and they landed up at the hospice that I volunteered in. And there was
Oh,
just
wow.
too many degrees of um entwining
Yeah.
things, you know, it wasn't any degree of separation. And I held all of their hand at the end of life. I talk about them every day, and I told them that I would keep their legacy alive. And I haven't lost an executive in 15 years.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. And you mentioned something at the beginning of that where you talked about just believing, maybe I misphrased it here, but believing that you could share your leadership story,
Yeah.
right?
And not be afraid to do so.
Right. Talk to me about that because that fear piece is so huge. Like, who am I to tell my leadership story? Or why is my leadership story more valuable than anybody else's? Why would people listen? Talk me through your processing of the different emotions that went along with that.
I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and I've had a lot of loss, lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I went to hospice as a volunteer to help my own grief journey. Um, I lost my dad in my second year of university. I was 21, and I had to become an adult really quick. Like, I honestly feel, you know, when a young person's in post secondary education, that's to me the formidable years. And I didn't have any guidance, and I had no choice. Emotional intelligence was the foundation, and emotional resilience became my tool. So I had to grow up quick, and I had four horrible bosses.
Yeah.
Horrible. You know, I came in early, I worked late, I was a team player, I ran around, I dressed, I did all the things. And I get to the end of the probation, and they would say, "You know, it's just not working." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
Huh.
And on the last one, the vice president asked me out for lunch, and I honestly thought he was going to hit on me.
Sure.
And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to go for lunch." And he landed up being my mentor, and he leaned across the table, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's happening?" And he said, "You need to look at me and you need to listen." And he said, "You're losing your job at 5 o'clock, and it has nothing to do with you." He said, "Your boss," her name was Nancy,
Uh-oh.
"is so unhappy." He said, "She's overweight, she's middle aged, she hates her job, she's divorced, and you're this gregarious, happy, heart centered." And he's like, "She's looking at you thinking my life sucks." And he's like, "Start your own business." And he was my mentor right up until 4 years ago when I lost him to cancer. I probably wouldn't have started my own company if he didn't push me, but he validated that my behavior was awesome, and her judgment of me had nothing to do with me. And thank God he did. But I
Mm.
carried that for a long time. And then I met a woman who did her PhD, and it's actually called tall poppy syndrome. And I write about it in my book. And it's exactly that. It's like when you're this bright light and you're happy and positive and you have a great mindset. And then you get these people like the Nancys who they call them cutters, and they cut you down.
Mhm.
Well, now I just shine my light a little brighter so I don't have to listen to the Nancys. And I don't. And I'm to the point now in my business, I choose who I want to work with, but I've earned it.
Yeah. But you can even
And my
make that go ahead. I'm
and
sorry.
my and my book has just taken the credibility up another level.
But you can even apply that to a life lesson, right? If we have somebody in the community that's not a leader in a business, when I hear you say that, I feel like they could say, I get to choose who's in my circle.
100%. Boundary management is key in life and in leadership. And so many people get to middle age and they're people pleasers, and
Mm.
they're riddled with perfection. And I'm like, take the obligation cape off, put in some boundaries, and fall on your face, because that's how you're going to get to success.
Why do you think that hits so heavy in middle age?
Because people attach their identity to their worth and worthiness,
Mm.
and they say things inside their head like, "Oh my God, I'm 45. I thought I would have been married and had the White House with the picket
Oh.
fence and 3 kids. And I thought I would have got the promotion." And it's like this story that's on repeat, and their identity is attached to their worth and worthiness because they never managed or fostered and loved the inner leader.
Mm. That's a fantastic explanation of that.
I see it and coach it every single day.
Yeah. What I love about you, Deb, is you believe it, right? Like I can just
Oh,
feel
I
like
live it.
you're,
I believe
yeah.
it's my conviction. I'm so passionate about heart-centered leadership. My daughter was student council president at our local university,
Yeah.
and I couldn't have paid for a better year of leadership. And she got to see the good, the bad, the indifferent.
Yeah.
And the last sentence of my introduction is, you do not need initials after your name to be kind.
Mm.
And she was in a lot of meetings with a lot of people with a lot of initials after their name. And she's like, they are so unkind.
Yeah.
And they would challenge her and she'd be shaking. Her knees would be shaking. Her voice would be shaking. And I'm like, stand in your greatness. And she did such a good job leading that the student council manager went to the board of directors and they created a scholarship in her name for the next 5 years. And it's called the Laura Crowe Heart Centered Leadership Award. And she said, Mom, that is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I said, that's why there's not a lot of heart centered leaders, because it's hard.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for mentoring that and being there to support and witness that.
Yeah, there was a lot of tears.
I bet.
Yeah,
I-
I didn't understand why they were inviting us to the school to see her speech, because we already attended the dress rehearsal in our living room. And I'm like, okay, we'll be there. And like the look on her face, and they said, we've never done this, but she did so much deep foundational work at the organizational level. She created relationships. She honored connection. She made relationships that had never been done in the history of the school.
Right.
And so many professors came up to her and said, you gave me courage to speak because you had courage to speak. And I'm like, that's transformation. That's
Yeah.
heart-centered leadership. That's inspiring people.
Which is it's ironic to me, Deb, that if we polled people and asked them what they want more of in their life, they would say more relationships, right? Deeper connect, like almost everybody would, right?
Yes.
Not the what like tangible thing, cars, houses, but what do you want to feel? It'd be relationships, connectedness, value. People know my name, they respect me. But yet somehow we forget to give that.
Yeah.
We want this, but we don't give that. And it seems so simple, right? Like just and the word that I come up with, and I've been teaching this in law enforcement classes that I'm blessed to teach, and it really takes my back at first because there are hard, tough people with all the body armor and exterior is. I challenge you guys, what if we truly look around the room right now and we decide we're going to love one another? Would we then, could we still do all the hard stuff our job requires? They can,
Oh, first responders, they're my favorite
right?
because
They can still do it even if they feel love.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But once,
Yeah, I have a nephew that's a firefighter. I have
yeah,
another one that's a police officer. Um, don't get caught up in the extrinsic value and the uniform and the ego.
yeah, but we don't train them well enough to balance that,
Correct.
right? We need to spend more time. And that's what I challenge when we say we love each other. Would that also mean maybe I give you a little more grace if you made a mistake and I let you learn from it without ridicule?
But that system doesn't allow for errors. And I understand there's discipline and structure and
For
systematic
sure.
principles. I've done some training here
Yeah,
with such people, and it's harder for the women, I'll be honest, because it's a
yeah,
male dominated
for
sector for
sure.
sure. There has to be room for failure, and failure can come in innovation, decision making, collaborative thinking, discussion. If there's no room for failure, you're never going to foster or grow or evolve innovation.
No, 100% not, because innovation only comes from risk taking, right? And knowing I'm empowered to think differently than how we've always done it.
I think risk taking, but I think sitting and doing what I would call visionary leadership will always trump the risk taking, because I always have them put the risk taking away because it's systematic.
Mm,
So I always say, if I take away the uniform, the armor,
yeah.
all the things, think SWAT team. If we take all that away, we're sitting around at a barbecue and everyone's in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and their flip-flops. What's working? What's not working? What do you think? Tell me more about that idea. That is the true feeding ground for innovation. Yeah, but nope,
Hmm.
forget about that. We're going to forget, so you have to remove the extrinsic systematic principles and put them in a fun environment. So it's just everyone's in their t-shirt, shorts, and sandals. We all do that. We all go to the beach,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
What were you thinking about that? How did you come up with that? And tell me more about that. And it fosters beautiful conversations. I've done it with executives during COVID. I had to have them turn off their cameras and close their eyes so that they could really hone in to not only what was being said, but listening to the emotion behind the words.
Mm.
Powerful,
Yeah.
especially with first responders.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're like the goldfish 7-second attention, that's who we are now. You don't grab our attention in 7 seconds, which is, 1 second less than a goldfish, well, you're done. We have one chance to make a first impression, and it's most important, especially with that specific example. First
Yeah.
responders have this visceral fear of, what if I fail? But what if you don't?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's ingrained, right? And not just first responders, but I think just a lot of society is so afraid of failure. So
Absolutely.
afraid if I stumble and it's caught on camera and then I go viral for my mistake, right? But that's no way to live.
It's no way to live. And, it's sad that that's their default for thinking, but that's what the media has done for us.
Which I think goes all the way back to something we talked about at the beginning, Deb, and that's that self-awareness of, am I living my life? Am I leading the way I'm supposed to lead out of fear of what others are
Other,
thinking or what I truly value, like where I want my life to be?
well, it's in my book. The best diet, and I want you to get on this diet today too. The best diet that I'm on is I've lost the weight of other people's opinions
Oh, there you go.
many years ago.
I love that. Well, I'll tell you, Deb, I love that. I lost the weight of other people's opinions. That's fantastic. You feel light, yeah? Your jeans fit better?
I'm doing me, and you know
Yeah,
what? I know not everyone in the world is going to love me, and that's okay. That's okay. There's a lot of people in the world. There's enough work and enough to do for all of us.
yeah,
And I think if people live in that mindset and they're positive, like I said, I lay my head down every night thinking today was a good day. Tomorrow's going to be a bit better. Every day I want to be a little bit better
yeah,
because we can't stop evolving like we talked about before.
yeah,
People retire, they stop. Even in business as entrepreneurs, you're traveling and moving and seeing different things, and wherever you're immersed in, that's going to affect how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're going to say, who's on your podcast. And that's kind of cool because you're visiting many different places and spaces and cultures, and that's a fun thing.
yeah. And to me, it's one of the greatest values I get is I get to expand my circle, right? Like I get to talk to Deb today from Canada while I'm here. I'm sitting in Wyoming today, and I think more people need to take ownership of how do I use this? How do I use this current state of technology, whether I like it or not, to
Yeah.
broaden my circles, to empower me so that I too go to bed tonight, and go, man, that was a good day and I learned a little something today.
Absolutely. And I think when you stop learning, you start living. You stop living.
You stop
At
living.
least I feel that way. I always want to add something else into the toolkit. I always say that to my leaders. We're
Yeah.
going to put a lot of tools in your toolkit so then you're going to know what you need to pull out on that given day with whatever leader comes your way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Deb, it's been an honor having you on the show, and I love your energy, my friend. Where can our community get your book, The Heart-Centered Leadership Playbook, and follow along on your journey?
So my website's being updated right now, but I'm on LinkedIn and I love connecting with other heart-centered leaders on LinkedIn. And my book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's in all the online spaces you can shop.
Awesome. Thank you
And
so.
if you're an audiobook, I just finished my audiobook at the end of February. So it just went live
Oh,
in
nice.
March.
Did you narrate it?
I did.
Yeah, I did that same thing too. Did you have fun doing that?
I did, and there were many times where I was in tears and the engineer stopped and he said, "You know what I love about this? I know this is your book and nobody else wrote it." Because he said, "I can hear the emotion as you're
Mm,
narrating the words, especially the chapter on my Nana."
yes.
He had to stop a few times during that because it was tough to get through, but I had a lot of people offer to narrate my book, but your book is like your baby,
Yeah.
like, nobody should narrate it but you.
Yeah. And honestly, I debated narrating my own book or not. And then I listened to Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. And like I had so much fun just listening to him tell me his stories. Like, that's exactly how I want to do it.
Good for you.
Yeah. Deb, it's been an honor having you on the show, my
Thanks
friend.
for having me.
You keep letting your light shine and keep leading through that heart, my friend, and you're making the world a better place.
Thank you so much.